Right. Meanwhile, the president is pushing for support for local businesses. He plans to get both private and government businesses to financially commit to the growing economy.
I want to meet with the CEOs of various companies in our country and see the extent to which South African companies can match the investments that we are going to get from offshore. And this also includes our state-owned enterprises. Some of them still are able, through their balance sheets, to make commitments. Those that are challenged, we will continue revamping them.
All right, to discuss this, we have in studio political analyst Sipho Seepe. And sir, you're so humble. Why don't you tell the people you studied in Harvard? You should make more noise about that, really.
No, it's. I think most of us have studied abroad, and I don't think it's a big deal.
Well, I think it's a big deal. France was playing yesterday. The World Cup was yesterday. And what were you doing? You were reading and studying.
No, it's just reading. I mean, I'm not. I prefer to play than to watch.
Okay, so let's play a little politics and talk politics right now. We're talking about Cyril Ramaphosa, and his target is $100 billion in 5 years. My question to you, Professor, is whose economy will it be after 5 years if you inject this kind of money into South Africa?
Well, I think that's the question that is not being raised, because when people invest, they have interest.
They dictate the tune, correct?
Exactly. They are not investing because they like you. They invest because they can make profit. And investors also would want to make sure that they also dictate the policy that directs. They will need issues of assurance. And this is where the whole idea is also very weak. And even when you listen to him, he talks about pledges and commitments. Pledges and commitments does not mean that money is going to flow. And it doesn't flow until people are sure that they are convinced that it's a lucrative business for them.
Correct.
So we've had many people, even in the last 5 years, when he was a deputy president, making those pledges. I mean, even the whole notion of bringing investors, local investors, business and all that has been an ongoing discussion within government.
So in other words, you're saying we shouldn't pop out the champagne and start celebrating because of that commitment?
Until you see the money flowing.
Until you see the money.
Until you also see that there'll be also growth in terms of number of jobs created, because we're not even sure what type of investment these people are talking about. You have had the money flows into the country and they go out immediately.
Correct.
And this is why the COSATU and others used to talk about the jobless growth. So it's possible to have growth, but that is jobless. So you need to be very careful about what you're talking about.
Right. And speaking of joblessness, this is a country that has 9 million people unemployed. The unemployment rate is about 27.6%. But the big question is our president. We're going to talk about him a little later. It seems that every time he takes 3 steps forward, his detractors take him back 2 steps backward. Now, some of his detractors are saying it's not about the money, it's about the corruption. And the investment will not make sense if Cyril Ramaphosa himself doesn't clamp down on corruption. And we've seen issues in the Northwest that he's turned a blind eye to. We've seen in various provinces where contractors have put the cost of a single toilet, as much as 150,000 rand, and nothing is being done about that.
Well, there's an issue of corruption which is within the province of government to deal with. And I think we have instruments, but what we also need to understand is that we're in a constitutional democracy. Just because you can make accusations against people, our system requires that you must actually prove it. So that will not be solved overnight. But also it should be pointed out that even as it talks about the SOEs, the person in government who was in charge of SOEs is a deputy president, and he was a deputy president for the last 5 years. So people who are aware of that level of detail will say, yes, but you were in charge of those for the last 5 years. What do you do? So we'd rather wait until there's a cleaning. So that's the first thing that we need to pack. Then the second issue that you must address is issues of skills. Because investors are saying we also would like to have people who are skilled. And if we're going to invest, we need to have that environment that says the cost of doing business in South Africa is encouraging. And this is what they have addressed under President Zuma in terms of Invest South Africa. So he's building on that. But still, if you don't have the skills, you also have a problem. And there are issues of labor. some of the companies that want to invest in South Africa, they say, but you guys, as soon as we put a structure, your guys go on strike. We know how the BMW decided in the past to say, we are engaged in global production. And South Africa is one of the places where some of the parts are being put together. But if you guys continue to threaten, we'd rather go to places where you don't have these major threats. So we must also address the issues of labor. There must be, it cannot be correct for an investor to say, I'm going to put money there and I'm not sure that the workers are going to be. So we are the most unionized country, active, which is proper. But at the same time, we must pay attention to saying some of the things require a compromise. So whether we can strike that, and what you're beginning to see in Cyril Ramaphosa is what people say he's almost taking step backs because he needs to accommodate all these multiple conflicting interests.
We're going to talk about that. We're not done with that yet. Joining us on Skype is Asid Mohammed. Asid, thank you for joining us. I'm going to ask you the same question I asked the Honorable Professor. Well, $100 billion injected into the economy after 5 years. Whose economy will it be?
Sorry, you went a bit quiet. Good morning, everybody. You went a bit quiet there, but I couldn't hear your question. Can you just repeat it quickly?
Well, quite simply, Ramaphosa is hoping to have $100 billion injected into his economy, our economy, after 5 years. And my question is, if that actually happens, whose economy will it be in 5 years?
Okay, I didn't hear your question, but I can gather from the earlier answer what you were looking for, what you were asking. I must say the first thing, I think we should welcome the $20 billion commitment of investment. As your earlier speaker said, it's not, the money hasn't come in yet. It'll hopefully come over the next 5 or 10 years invested into South Africa. It's more an indication in principle of what investors are going to do. It's a good start, towards the 100 billion rand commitment that President Ramaphosa is looking for, and I think that's a positive. The one thing we must remember is that the Zuma years has really put us into a deep hole that we need to get out of, and it's very difficult to do that over a short space of time. President Ramaphosa has done a lot already. There are detractors at the moment. He's achieved a lot. He's changed key people at the SOEs. These things take time to fix and to correct. What's more important is that the cost of doing business in South Africa, whether it's for local investors or international investors, must be reduced. A simple example is getting Eskom right, getting energy costs lower, and then that's a tall ask. The cost of doing business, whether it's with municipalities in South Africa, getting the costs down, getting them to run more efficiently, getting policy certainty, and one of them would be the mining charter 3, getting policy certainty in that. The unfortunate part is, the free carry in the mining charter is an additional cost, and it's going to increase the cost of production in South Africa. So all of these efforts, it's going to take 2, 3, 4, 5 years to decrease the cost of production and create a lot more investors coming in.
All right, Asid, thank you for that insight. We'll come back to you shortly. Professor, what do you have to say about that? $100 billion in 5 years, is that a positive thing? Did our president, who is a savvy businessman in his own right, does he have an alternative?
Yeah, I think we must deal with a bit of dishonesty that we often put across as commentators. First of all, the constitution of this country is very clear-cut that the ministers in the cabinet are individually and collectively accountable. And it cannot be right to say if there's something wrong that went down, then it is because of one person. Cyril Ramaphosa was a deputy president of the ANC and in government. So he was the second in charge. So we must actually clear that. So you can't say that the problems arose because of one individual. And you can't say the person was also in charge of what happened in the municipalities. What we should be actually saying is that the ANC government, if it has failed, it has failed. And the constitution is very clear that you are not, if you felt that you are part of a team that is failing, you move out. But you can't 5 years later claim that I was not part of that. So that's a thing that I think is very dishonest. And also as a president of the ANC, Ramaphosa and Jacob Zuma, they have the top 6, which are also responsible politically. And they have the NEC, which are also responsible politically. If they fail politically, they all fail. So this notion of trying to find a scapegoat is actually nonsensical. But what it also shows, as you will also see some of the comments about Ramaphosa not being able to achieve what he wants to achieve, is precisely because of those real constraints that exist in both government and also in his party.
Okay.
So I do think that getting investment is good, but it's not the only thing. You do need to address many other things. And the things that Ramaphosa is talking about are not new. The whole notion of investing in infrastructure was also a government saying, we must also have faith in our economy, and we're going to invest in it, and we're going to invite you to be part of it. Ramaphosa was part of those discussions in the last 5 years, and as a businessman. So I do think that as we begin to look at politics, we must also be fair to him that if he does not achieve, it is because there are also constitutional and political constraints.
All right, let's bring Asid Mohammed. Asid, let's bring you back into this discussion. My question to you is, do you think we'll ever get to the point where government is not fighting fires and that the government is actually working and it's 100% positive and moving in the right direction?
I think we will. I'm quite optimistic about it, irrespective, and it's not, the question is not who is to blame, but to recognize that we're in a big, deep hole, and it's for the last 10 years we've moved into it. I'm quite positive about it. It's President Ramaphosa has done a lot in terms of making changes. Now he's in charge, he's in control. I agree that the ANC collective must take blame, whether it's there for what has happened. But I think, going forward, I'm quite positive that there is going to be change. We recognize the urgency. A lot has been done,
All right, let's move over to Professor Seepe. Professor, I'll let you have the last word. How would you assess our president's performance thus far?
Well, the ANC exists to engage in the process of liberation of black people in general and Africans in particular. The question that you need to ask is that what are the Africans saying on the ground? And you need to ask, why do we have service delivery protests on a daily basis? And it is no longer even on weekdays, even on a daily basis, on weekends. So that's the first thing. The notion of commitments, there is no money that has come in. Let's be clear about it. You also have to deal with issues of land. The people are saying, are we going to address these issues in a manner that suggests that we're moving forward? But here you have a president who's able to go to black people and tell them that we're going to deal with land. And then the black people are very happy. Then he goes to the Afrikaners. He says, we're going to deal with the issue of land. And they're very happy. Then you should know that somewhere there is a miscommunication. Because those who benefit from possession of land can't be very happy that the land is going to be taken away from them. So what we have here is a question of saying, depending on who you speak to, you give them a message that suggests that we are dealing with it, or it's not going to happen. Look, when I talk to business people and the Afrikaners and the white community, I say land must be expropriated. But there are all these other issues that need to be addressed. When you say that, you reaffirm the fact that you don't have to worry. This is just rhetoric in my party. It's not going to happen. So I don't think... I think it is too early.
Okay.
And if you see what the media has been doing in the last 3 months, they've been trying to sell a story of a new dawn. Even the commentator there was trying to do exactly that which comes from the media in terms of he has done a lot. But what is doing a lot? I mean, you have boards that have been changed. Right. Take ESCOM, for instance. It's a simple case where a board has been put there, and the board comes with a position and says there will be no increase in the salary. But the minister intervenes. He says there will be. So the question is, if these boards are so efficient, why should the minister now assume the role of a director of the boards when we actually thought we have put in place people who are effective, efficient, and competent? So I don't think we tend to want to celebrate too easily. And these are moments of easy victory. I mean, now you're beginning to see the media begin to say, can we actually look at Ramaphosa properly?
Right.
Rather than to always give him, actually one of the people said the honeymoon is over.
Okay.
And this is what we're beginning to see.
So in Professor Siepe's scorecard or in your personal report card, you will give Ramaphosa what?
No, I'll give him 4 actually.
4 out of 10?
Yes.
That's 40%?
Yes.
Okay. I said you would have the last word, but we do have still a little more time. So we'll go back to Asid Mohammed. Asid, my question to you is, what does the $100 billion investment mean to South Africans should it be successful?
Hi, I couldn't hear your... I think it will be quite significant in terms of investment, $100 billion. However,
and what would that mean to and for South Africans?
Yeah, I think it will be a positive development. It will probably create job creation. It will create confidence. But however, more important is that we want the private sector in South Africa to be able to match that $100 billion. That's very important, because if you're not getting local investors to invest at the same time, why should foreign investors come in and invest here if the local investors themselves don't have the confidence? The key is really to get business to actually start investing. And then in terms of their obligations, in terms of the financial services sector code, they have an obligation to invest in infrastructure investments, in targeted investments, in empowerment financing, and investments in creating small and medium-sized businesses. And that needs to come through as soon as possible to help South Africa not just achieve the $100 billion investment target over the next 5 years, it's got to get to at least $200 billion. And it's possible and it's achievable. If President Ramaphosa has just recently got commitments of $20 billion, I think the private sector in South Africa can actually match or beat that going forward in the longer term.
All right, let's leave that on a positive note. That was Aon Investment Management Chief Investment Officer Sipho Mohammed. Thank you for your insight and analysis. And Professor Siepe, it's always a pleasure and enlightening talking to you. Hope to speak to you again real soon.
Thank you very much.